Welcome, Anil. Anil Srivastava is a early film society person who is deep into film societies and films, and also the leaders of the film society movement from his school days. He's somebody who had the privilege of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of the country, coming and congratulating them for a new film club in his school at Bhopal. And Anil is going to speak to us, or we are going to speak about two important women leaders of the film society movement. Also, film policy. They had a major role in the film policy of India in 50s and 60s and 70s. Still, Mrs. Gandhi was alive, I'm sure. Mary Seton and Vijay Mulay, we all call her Akka. She's no, both of them are no more, and both are celebrating their centenary. Mary last year and Akka this year. So, Anil, welcome. And let me start by asking, you told me that you first came to know about Mary Seton when she wrote a long letter to you in Bhopal after hearing that you have started a film society there in the school. Is that right? Or was it that way you got in touch with her?
Yeah, thank you, Cherian, for the introduction. You see, we had started a film club in 1960 in Bhopal as a St. Joseph's Convent. And like all kids, wrote a letter to Chacha Nehru, as we could call it, saying, well, our projector is breaking down. Can you give us a projector? Because Nehru was supposed to come to Bhopal on a visit. And Mari at that time was a guest of Nehru and Mrs. Gandhi at Teen Murthy. And it seems that Nehru, Prime Minister Nehru actually handed over this letter saying, Mari, there's this kid who's written from Bhopal. See what. She was at that time working as advisor to the University Grants Commission from society, part of it. So I suddenly get a letter from a long letter. The Mari's usual way of using a foolscap letter pads, ruled letter pads, and writing. Most of it is handwritten, or used to be handwritten, and sending it across. So there was a long letter saying yes, and and telling me about the film society movement, what is happening here, the Delhi Film Society, this, that. And so that's how the correspondence started with her. And so that's how I got to know of Mari.
Okay.
And what was amazing about Mari, which I'm still hoping that someday somebody captures it, Mari was a very prolific letter writer, at least, and these used to be very painstakingly written, using most of the time handwritten things, sometimes typewritten, and describing what's happening and what's happening around her, or what is of common interest that we talked about. And the second thing which struck me, as I said, at that time, I was 15-year-old, and Mari was an established person. I was just a kid, and yet at the same time, the kind of collegial approach to it, taking it seriously and working with her, was very encouraging. So that's what really struck me about her. And of course, each of her letters had a tremendous amount of information about something or the other. That was presently occupying her. And sometime I remember, I almost got to know the Teen Murthy from her descriptions. That okay, this is what's happening on it. And later on in her book.
Let me come to that. You told me that as Lucknow Film Society activist, you were coming to Delhi, and she invited you to stay at Teen Murthy. And then how was that experience of Teen Murthy?
It was I'd never been to Delhi. so when she said to come over, come over, and there was the first Polish film festival, if I'm not mistaken, and we started the Lucknow Film Society. So I said, okay, so she's okay, I'll meet you at the station and look for me. And I got down from the train, and there was Mari, and Mari drove me. I mean, we drove together, and then I found myself at Murthy. And I got to stay a night there till we found some other arrangements to go. I stayed somewhere else. So yes, that's how it happened. I mean, you know.
Okay. Mari's role is a lot of people don't know what's her role in making the film society movement, which was sporadic, into a national movement, and also her contribution in establishing the film institutions like Film Institute. I am told that Satish Bahadur was a personal pick of Mari to the Film Institute. So that role, can you explain that role? Sorry, a little.
It is actually, Satish was at Agra University at the time, teaching social sciences, and he had a film club at Agra University, film club. And actually, this is time when Satish also came at the same time that I came to Delhi. And he came on the milk train from Agra because this was the time of the Goa liberation, and there were a lot of troop movements. And that's how I first met Satish, and and she equally, as I said, contributed to Satish's, Satish's insertion into the Film Society movement and the Federation and the Film Institute. Part of it. She was the one who introduced Satish, like she introduced me to the Film Society. So she introduced Satish to the Film Society.
Okay. So she was, through the documentation which I went through, N.T. Murthy and her booklets, she describes her travel across India, not only main metro cities, but tier 2 cities, and showing films like Nanook of the North and talking about it, and ensuring that the new India, which Nehru was building, had a look at what is happening outside India as far as good films are concerned. It's the whole effort was to change the film culture, is it not?
Yes, that what you're describing is something which came a little later, because Satish also was involved in that, and a lot of other people were involved in showing of those films. But what is important is Mari at that time had a status with the Ministry of Education, and through Ministry of Education, the National Institute of Audiovisual Education, which was on the Ring Road, and she actually brought some of the films, arranged for some of the films to be there. There's to be a film library of the Nayab. So, for example, so she got some of the films, 60-meter copies in that film library, Central Film Library, it used to be called, and which became a source of that thing, and a source of films to the Film Society. And we must remember there are three Film Society tracks. One was the Children's Film Society. That was originally what brought Mari to India, I believe. There was the University Film Society, and there was this Film Society, the Public Film Society, the Federation Film Society of India. So there were these three pillars to the Film Society movement. And yes, you're right about it. And not only that, she also wrote a lot of program material and book monographs on film appreciation and things like that, which were published by this National Institute.
Yeah, she was, in fact, I was going through the documents, even on UGC's University Film Council. She was the advisor for all that things, whether it is FFSI, University Film Council, and Children's Film Society. All of it, she was the main advisor. What do you think was her contribution in this thing? Was it she formulating the whole structure, what is to be done, how it has to function? What is it she was doing? Because she was already associated with British Film Institute before she came to Delhi.
Yes, there are two things to remember very strongly about Mari's own background. And Mari did claim, and I think there's her family has a India connection. I think her grandfather served in India and things like that. But more importantly, Mary was more of a, what should I say, a bee kind of, hopping from one plant to other and cross-fertilizing ideas and people. So it wasn't that Mari was writing all the strategy. Mari was the person who brought people together and to do things. So Mrs. Mulay Akka was one of them. Usha Bhagat, who was the cultural secretary to Indira Gandhi and a friend of Indira Gandhi and Nehru family household. She was very involved in it. I.K. Gujral, for example, who was a treasurer, later became treasurer of the Federation Film Society. So she brought all these people together, and they worked on things, and ideas and she was able to, because of her connection to the Prime Minister and Indira Gandhi, she was able to take it across to the right quarters in the government. I mean, one of the things she used to do for a long time is to arrange for the film screenings for the Prime Minister and other people. So sometime, one of the incidents was that there was a censorship issue that, we cannot allow uncensored films to the film societies. And she arranged to get the film shown at the Rashtrapati Bhavan or wherever it was to Nehru and others. And eventually there was a very, very unusual directive from the government saying that any film certified by the president of the Federation of Film Societies of India, which was Satyajit Ray, not Indira Gandhi, will be considered deemed to be cleared for screening at the Film Society.
Yes.
Now, this is a very exceptional regulation that came in, but it was mainly due to Mari Seton's effort working with Mrs. Mulay and others behind the scenes that it got done. And it's in the implementation stage, I believe, till today. I mean, I don't know. I have not been in touch, but that's how the thing works.
Now no longer it is applicable. In fact, each film festival has to get a special clearance from the INB ministry. That's the rule now. Everything is changed, over a period of time. And also I am told Mari was behind the introduction of the annual film appreciation course at Pune, along with the archive and the Film Institute. I think it was started in 1965 or sometime.
See, Mari was a supporter of anything that she considered to be in the direction, her vision of it. But I think the film appreciation course was very much the work of Satish Bahadur. And, with the assistance of PK, but obviously the support, Mari's support mattered a lot and her participation mattered a lot. Some of the courses she actually was a faculty member, and, so yes, the answer is yes, but actually the course I was there when Satish was working on it. And Satish had almost a fetish for film appreciation as a pedagogical tool. So, it was really, for Satish's work as a professor of film appreciation at the Film Institute, with very active support from Mari Seton.
Okay. Now, she wrote the first biography of Satyajit Ray in the 50s itself. I think late 50s or early 60s. Many people think that she had a role in ensuring the right profile for Satyajit Ray after Padar Panchali. You lived through that, that period, and you are in touch with all of them. So, you agree with that?
Yes, and I'll have to say yes and no. Mari did do a lot to promote, but there were a lot of other people also who did that. And Mari's way of doing things, from Paul Robeson biography to Sargai Einstein's biography to Panditji to Satyajit Ray, I mean, all of them. And I believe towards the end of her life, she was working on Indira Gandhi's biography. Has been that she got very involved in the subject of her biographies and and their mission in life and their activities. So she got introduced to Eisenstein through Paul Robeson's work, and because of that, she got introduced to Nehru because of Tendulkar was wanted to study at the Moscow Film Institute, and Mari was there. So, I mean, Mari and Tendulkar got to know, and that's how Tendulkar introduced her to Nehru's. There's another connection which was running quite, and I don't know which happened when cross connection was there. That Mari and Pamela Cullen were the two people very involved with the India League of Tenants.
Yes.
And so they were very, very, if you really look through the history of the thing, they're very prominently there.
Yeah, Pamela the forward to the last edition of Vijay Ray, biography, and where she mentions that.
But more than that, she was very, very actively involved in the 30s with Menon and the India Society, or whatever it's called.
India League.
Yeah. India League and Pam Cullen and Mari. If you could really find some papers on it, you'll find Mari is very prominently mentioned. I mean, at a time when Menon did not have that much popular support, he wasn't going to be. I mean, his friendship with Nehru was being formulated. It wasn't all there, which later became much deeper. So she was a kind of very much a go-between in that part of it.
So, in effect, her relationship with those people, Nehru, Mrs. Gandhi, and Krishna Menon, who were the most powerful people those days, I think that in a way helped the film policies to move faster than it should have been otherwise. Is it not?
Oh, definitely. I mean, definitely, there's no question about it.
Okay. Let's come to Akka. Akka is no more. Just 2 years back, she passed away, and I was really pleasantly surprised to know about her early life. When the condolence meeting, when it was read out, I was really shocked to hear the way she became what she became. From a very I would say deprived family in Bombay to well educated person in going to Leeds those days during the Second World War, and being a Communist Party member, and resigning from the party following Soviet attack of the Hungary. All these things, and I met her in the last 4 years of her life for my book and all. It was like very, very, very interesting to know the person, because she had no ideas of anything, and she was always willing to help others, especially the subject anything to do with films. I found that she was more than happy to speak about it, even at that age. She was 94 when I met her. So how did you also were part of that circle? How did you meet her, and what is the interactions going on?
See, I met Akka, in fact, Chidanand Dasgupta and everybody else in that 61. 61, I came to Delhi, and there was this Polish film festival, which was organized. And Akka was, as the very fact that we're using the word Akka, the elder sister, the word Akka to everybody who was connected with it. Right. And her home in Kakanagar was a place where, if you talk to their daughters, they'll tell you it was a kind of a railway station, because everybody was coming in and going out, and, out of the house. Yeah. That was the kind of headquarters for the federation in Delhi, And I met Akka in 61. So after that, she came down to Lucknow, and I have a picture
Yeah.
of Akka.
I used it in my book,
Yeah. So that's how I met her, and she was, as I said, she was a mentor in every possible way, right? And she was very, very interested in anything to do with film, and very unassuming person.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that there wasn't any airs about it, and I had several professional encounters and work with her over the years. So yes, you're right about it. And again, she was, fortunately for us, Akka has left behind an autobiography, which is fairly voluminous and very descriptive, unlike Mari's. There is no biography or no autobiography of Mari Seton. But yes, Akka's biography is there, and all that you said, I mean, all of that is Akka. I mean, I knew Akka till almost 2 months before she passed away, and she also knew Shampa very well, quite independently.
Yeah.
And we spent, whenever we were in Delhi, that was one of the major things, to go and spend time with Akka, and even at that stage where she was very, very old and very ill, she was still in the high spirits. I mean, so she was, Anil, why don't you do this? Why don't you go and meet so and so, or talk about things that are of interest and fascination to her till the last minute? And so she was a very, very, very vibrant person in that sense of term, and in many ways, I mean, I have also had major disagreements with her at various times in my life, but even then, there was a tremendous amount of affection, and for me and for everybody. I mean, everybody she came across. It's not just exceptionally to me. I was fortunate enough to be very close, but there were a lot of other people. And sometimes I would feel jealous that maybe Shaka is paying great attention to this or that person, and But yes, she was Akka. I mean, till the last minute.
I find that she's also the founder of Patna Film Society, Delhi Film Society.
Yes.
Also the founding joint secretary of the FFSI, Federation of
Yeah, no, she was definitely the. I mean, I was aware of the whole process, and I think she definitely was a leading light. Leading person behind the formation of the Federation of Film Societies, which is Raj Gupta and other Satyajit Ray, Usha Bhagat, who's forgotten, people like that. But definitely, she was very much part of it.
Okay, but I find that University Film Council, when it was formed, she was not much involved in it. But when SITE happened, she was the one who was commissioning all that documentaries for SITE during the emergency.
There is a little different thing that somehow I can throw some light into it. Actually, Akka, and this was a time when Akka and I were also got into a lot of disagreement over things. But she was a very strong personality. No, she was not just commissioning. She set up the Center for Educational Technology at NCRT with the UNICEF support, and she was the head of the center for many years, and worked with a number of filmmakers and others to create educational films, which went on to SITE and beyond it. She had a very, very prominent role as a head of an institution that she created, and a person who shouldn't be forgotten. Again, somebody who's not, Gopal Dutia, who was at that point in time at UNICEF, came from Anandam. And this is another thing to think about, how the Film Society percolated and permeated the whole movement. Gopal was Anandam Film Society in Mumbai.
Yeah, Mumbai.
When UNICEF started looking into education and SITE and everything else, I think it probably was Akka who recommended Gopal Dutia to be the officer to come to Delhi with UNICEF. And then she and Gopal and working together, and I think formulated the idea of the Center for Educational Technology as part of the NSERT and National Council for Education Research and thing. And she developed that institution and ran it till her retirement. When she retired from CRT. And it was a very, very vibrant institute, which brought up a lot of people and involved a lot of filmmakers, whether it was Sukhdev or whether whosoever it is, into educational films, educational material.
Okay. So, how will you describe her involvement as far as policy was concerned? Because she was working in the Ministry of Education in Delhi, and very close to Mrs. Gandhi. So, how was her interventions as far as policies were concerned?
I think my own observation of it, because I saw some of those documents as they were being created, and as I said, I was audacious enough to be wanting to be part of it. In fact, I shouldn't have been a part of the federation at that time because I wasn't 18 till and that part of it. I think one of the great things about the Film Society and the film policy and other things at that stage was it was a very collaborative and consultative process. There was a lack of ego. I mean, so I'm sure that now that Subhashini has given Akka's papers to the archive, it needs to be looked into. It's very often you will not even find people's names in it. I mean, you won't find Mari's or Akka's name on it. I mean, on some of the documents printed across. And these were shared with people in the Film Society and others. Okay, what do you have to say about this? And people put their thoughts. I think, so in a way, Akka was a convener of it, definitely. I think, and Usha Bhagat had a role to make sure that it got on top of Mrs. Gandhi's table, or whosoever was the person dealing with it on Nehru's while Nehru was alive. And things. So all those things happened. So it was a very collective effort, and this is something which actually needs to be learned from, because what has destroyed the federation of thing has become egoistic. It's okay. I'm the person. I'm written it. Everybody is putting its name to it. Here you wouldn't even know anybody's names who put it, but everybody's thoughts were put before it. And anywhere, wherever it's necessary, whether it's to do the film policy or film academy document or whosoever one was working on. So I think, yes, she definitely was a mover and shaker in that. But I wouldn't say that it's because of her friendship with Mrs. Gandhi. And I don't think at any point in time she even had a formal title of advisor to Mrs. Gandhi. I mean, she was in a circle of those people who were consulted. And I'm sure the process, the way it worked, is Mrs. Gandhi would say to Usha Bhagat, Usha, what do you think? Can you find out for me what should be done about this? And Usha will go to Akka will go to Chidanan Dasgupta or Mari or everybody else will just pitch into it, in the wider Film Society community as such. So I think that was what they really did, and that was amazing.
So looking back, how do you assess their roles, Mari and Akka? Because both were very powerful. They were around Mrs. Gandhi, and both were committed to a new film culture for India.
Yes, they definitely had a major contribution to make, but I will not sort of single it out that any one of them even thing. And I think both of them were totally seeped into culture more than just film culture. Film culture to them was a part of the general cultural movement, education. If you remember, Akka, and I think it was about 62 or 63, that she was a member of the education commission, or whatever it's called, with Education Policy Commission headed. I think she was a member secretary of the commission, and I think so. So she definitely contributed and put things, and Mari definitely put things into it, and gathered inputs and provided that into the policy process. But we must remember the policy process at that point in time was much more fluid and much more open. So it wasn't there. I can't remember at any point in time there was a committee, which a task force, a committee that was created for any of the thing. I remember a lot of ideas and material were gathered and put before it, and it happened. So I would say yes. I mean, but I don't think we should say they were the only people or because of that.
Okay. Okay. So, in fact, I find it's very strange that uh, they both need to be celebrated. Their centenaries along with Ray and Chiranda Gupta. And I was mentioning to FFSI people and many others that look, you need to celebrate these two women leaders who are equally, equally played an important role, like Ray or Chidanda Gupta. But I think it is unfortunate that the present regime, at least in the government, is not interested. But I'm sure that people who are in the know of things will come around and do the rightful thing.
Many people don't know their roles. You
Yes.
see, that's the whole thing, because they were, as I said, they were quite often behind the scenes, and they didn't sort of present it themselves with, right in front of it.
Yeah.
And they also worked very closely with Chiranda Gupta and other people. So, I mean, I don't think, but for Akka or Mari, you would have seen the federation being created, because I don't think, like Calcutta Film Society and everything else, that Satyajit Ray was very interested, and he was very willing to lend his name and be part of it, be collegial and part of it. But left to himself, Satyajit Ray would not have created a federation of film society. Left to herself, Indira Gandhi would have brought all of this together. Right? So these are people who brought a lot of people, and a lot of people who are, not there, together, and made and orchestrated them to work towards a film culture and a national culture policy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Anil, for at least talking about the two centenarians, which the even Indian media is not yet found, what's celebrating. Of course, they all wrote about Ray, but not about Akka or Mary yet. I'm sure that many people will see or recover.
One of the things that I want to mention here, in going, and which is, I think I've mentioned to you before also, that Mari had a role in film, but besides that, she had a very kind of prominent role as, a person who was in the evolution of the contemporary history of India. The most critical. And so she was very involved in all of that. And I think her memory of her papers, which were worth researching, to find out what was the relationship with various people, not just with Nehru and Menon, or not just with Film Society and Satyajit Ray. Mari was a great observer of what was happening around. I remember meeting Mari once in Delhi in the Air Force Officers Hostel in and I don't know what she was doing there, why she was staying there, but I remember sitting down in her room. So she had this great, what should I say? She was a fly on the wall on the evolution of the Indian nation as such.
Yes.
Yes. And and there somewhere, I'm sure it is in Mrs. Guy. If I received these long letters from her, I'm sure Indira Gandhi had much longer letters over a longer period of time from Mari Seton describing all sorts of. I think it's worthwhile looking into these people and their contribution at that time, in the evolution of the Indian nation and culture, and which is forgotten. And you're talking of, federation, and other people forgetting it. When we were talking about Chiranda Gupta Centenary, I said, one of the biggest contributions Chiranda made was creation of filmmakers, not the film society. But nobody is really interested in looking at film society as a cultural instrument. I can't call film society being IPTA, but film society has a similar role and aspiration of forming the culture of India. As such. And which is what's lost. It's nothing to do with just films. It's globalization of the culture. Anyway, so I just wanted to plug that into you.
Yeah, and you also told me that somebody in London is writing a biography of Murray. Who's that, and what is the stage of that?
I don't remember the name offhand, which I'll send it to you. Actually, I've been like you. I've been trying to persuade a lot of people to write about Murray. Murray's biography. As a person, for example, when Mari was in Chicago, she was very involved in getting refugees out of Nazi Germany into America. And so there's a lot of things that she's been involved in, which is not. So I just was hoping that it will be captured, that, and her role with Paul Robeson, for example. I mean, as you know, Robeson's importance in the whole thing, her role with Eisenstein, and her years in Russia and the thing. She was at the time of the founding of the London Film Society in 1925. She was there with. So I think there's a tremendous amount of very rich material, and much of it is on India and would be in Indian archives and collection. That one needs to be able to tell that story of India via, somebody like Mari Seton, who was observing and acting. I mean, when Nehru and Menon could not be seen together, Mari was almost a courier shuttling between the two houses and, taking it across. So, I mean, there is a tremendous amount of role she played, and definitely in Indira Gandhi's life. I mean, Indira Gandhi, I believe, was a very dear friend of ours. So both of them, Indira Gandhi stayed with her in London whenever she went to. And she was obviously a great admirer of Indira Gandhi. And in fact, there's a line in, I think, her biography of Nehru called Panditji. She says, if Indu would have married her father's protege rather than a mother's preference, history of India would have been different. So she was very intimately involved in the family, founding family of India and the rest of it. So it will be worthwhile investigating into writing of the biography. I'll send you the name of this person. So I was trying to persuade a lot of people, and this particular person at Brighton picked it up, and he wrote to me that he's writing the biography of Mari Seton.
Okay. Thank you for your
time. Thank you.
And, I featured both of them in my own way in Malayalam in my book, and many people, for many of them, Malayalam reading people, it's totally new. They didn't know their role as such. So, in fact, it's Adur who told me about Mari's role. And Mari was in Kerala, I think 65, 66, and went to Krishna Menon's Taravadu